Live from the WPAA studios in Wallingford, Connecticut, and streaming live worldwide on the web at WPAA.tv. Welcome to the OpenMike TV show. I'm your host, Michael Cuomo. Welcome along on this Wednesday evening, October 24th, 2012. As promised, ladies and gentlemen, the gentleman to my left, I want to introduce him now in a round of applause from the studio audience for the Republican State Rep, not yet, Republican State Rep candidate for the 85th District, Mr. Greg Bauchand. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Greg Bauchand, ladies and gentlemen, is here live on the OpenMike set, and there are his credentials on the bottom there. He will be on along with me until 9 o'clock. We'll be here taking your questions, calls, comments, etc. You know, we have less than 2 weeks away from Election Day, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
And with that being said, we have Mr. Greg Bauchand on to talk about his campaign. He is going against the Democratic incumbent, Mary Mashinsky. And Greg, just to start, Mary Mashinsky has been in office since Jimmy Carter was president.
Well, she got elected when Jimmy Carter was president. That's right. She took office after he left office, but she was elected when he was president. Yep.
Which was about, what, 32 years ago?
32 years ago.
1980.
Yeah.
I know the year very well. That was the year I was born.
Oh,
but,
really? Okay.
Well, before we get into some questions here for Greg, I want to just quickly remind the viewers once again, go to Facebook.com, also YouTube. You can watch, it's Facebook.com/OpenMikeTV, YouTube.com/OpenMike80. And Greg, you have a Facebook page, which is Elect Bauchand.
Elect Bauchand, right.
Elect Bauchand. For all you Facebook viewers out there, you can go on Elect Bauchand to get more information about Greg's campaign. With that being said, I want to ask you, Greg, some questions.
Okay.
Which is why you're here.
Fire away.
And I always try to be right down the middle, as my viewers know. I don't take sides. But I will ask the important questions that the viewers out there want answers to.
Great.
And you know, perhaps they're a little shy or timid to ask.
Always
so I'm
helpful
going to fire
have you
away.
Okay.
First,
have at it.
First question, let's get just a little quick background about you.
Okay.
Let's talk about personal life, you know, your career, married, children, divorced, on Match.com. I mean, whatever you want to talk about.
Whatever it is on Match.com.
Yeah.
No,
I've had great success on that.
I've been married 43 years now. I'm an attorney. I have 3 children, all in their 40s. And I live here in Wallingford.
Born and raised?
No, I was born in New York City, raised in New Jersey. My wife is from Massachusetts, and so since my family was in Jersey and her family was in Massachusetts, we decided to settle in Connecticut, which is how we got here. Kind of a political family decision, you know.
And I know your daughter Tanya.
Yes.
From Facebook. I'm sure she's watching. Special hello to Tanya, and I've been promoting your appearance on her Facebook page as well as your page. So
okay.
Thank you for.
She has a lot of people on her Facebook page.
Yeah.
A lot of followers. So
she has like 4,800 more than I do.
Yeah.
Now, okay. With that being said, Greg, let's just kind of summarize. You know, and obviously it's an hour show.
Yeah.
So we'll keep it within, you know, a few minutes here. Why are you running in this election? I mean, why run now? This is your first time going at it in a political capacity.
It is. So on a joke kind of front, it's because of Tanya. You know, she talked me into this, and I'm going to get her back someday. But
so your daughter talked you into it?
Yeah, she did. She really kept after me to run, because I've never run before. But I've loved every minute of it. I'm glad I did it. And
when did you actually? First of all, when did you throw your name out there in the campaign?
I really don't. You know, it's kind of all become a blur now. But it was, 3 or 4 months ago when the Republican Party, the town committee, goes through a process by which they select, and there were 2 candidates, and I threw my head in the ring first, and another woman entered, and we had a spirited battle for a month or 2, and then I won what's called the caucus.
Okay.
We had a lot of fun that night. We packed the house with our supporters. She packed the house with her supporters, and It was a raucous good time. Most of those things, as you know, the Republican Party, the town committee goes through a process by which they select, and there were 2 candidates, and I threw my head in the ring first, and another woman entered, and we had a spirited battle for a month or 2, and then I won what's called the caucus. Okay.
And
one candidate comes out, and the party kind of gets behind the one candidate. In this particular case, we had a robust and fun contest for it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But in answer to your question, why I got into it, other than the joke of Tanya, talking me into it, was that Tanya has a son, Chris, who's 12 or 13, I think, and I have another grandson who's 12 or 13, and there is no question that the current voters, by electing people who spend money like water, are burdening the next generation and the generation after that with tremendous debts that are going to severely hamper their lifestyle. The taxes that are going to be necessary to pay all the debts that we're now we're consuming or constructing, is just going to burden them. They're going to start at, we think 30% tax is too high. They're going to start at 30 just to pay for the mess that we've gotten them in, and they're going to have to add their own 20 or 30 for their own governmental needs, whatever the numbers are. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be like Greece is today, France, whatever. And just because it's 30 years from now, people don't talk about it. But when I look at my grandson's face and see them not even knowing what's coming, not even understanding what's coming, it motivated me to do something about it. So.
Okay. The old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And some will argue that Mary Mashinsky's been in office 32 years, and she's doing a good job, and now's not a time to change. You would say to those people what?
Absolutely a time for change, because Mary's not doing a good job. Now, you'll never hear me say a negative word about Mary Mashinsky. She's a fine woman. Everybody likes her. She has gotten up every morning for the last 32 years with the intent of servicing the needs of the people of Wallingford, and I applaud her for that intent. But the point of fact is, for 32 years, she's been the representative of the Quinnipiac River, not Wallingford. And it's time for Wallingford to get its representative back. It's time for Wallingford to get its representation back. And so somebody's advocating for the taxpayer of Wallingford rather than the fish and the clean water and the big green leafy trees.
So is it your opinion, your take, that Mary Mashinsky is more involved in the environmental issues rather than the economical issues that surround Wallingford?
Well, she's on the bonding committee and so forth, but her real focus, her passion, is all of the environmental stuff, and also for women and children, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm for all those issues she's for. That's not the point. The point is, can we afford to have someone who always says yes to every single request of the state legislature, whether it be for heating oil, whether it be for cleaning up rivers that are going to cost Wallingford $19 million when it doesn't harm anybody. What they want us to take out of the river doesn't harm anybody, doesn't harm any animals, doesn't harm any humans. It's crazy to burden Wallingford residents with that. So all of those issues, increased spending without limit, is what's gotten us where we are, and it's time to have Mary do something else. She can stay in her environmental love. She's good at it. That's great. But we need somebody to go to Hartford and start what I call hooting and hollering to say no to some of these expenses.
Greg, if I can interrupt you, we have our first caller of the night, so
Great.
we can get to that. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Greg Bauchand. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, hello.
Having Greg on tonight.
How are you?
Good. There's a delay, so that's why we're off.
Oh, no problem. Is this Craig?
Craig who?
No,
Go ahead. What's your question?
Go ahead. What's your question?
I'm concerned with crime. Can you tell me, Greg, how you would compare yourself with Mary Mashinsky on crime and what you see your role in improving Connecticut's economy?
Well, let's take the crime issue first. Just the other day in a debate, Mary Mashinsky made the rather odd statement that we were putting too many people in jail. and she was, of course, advocating early release at the same, within that answer. But her comment was really quite strange. Number one, I'm against early release. I believe that all of our criminals ought to spend their entire allocated sentence in jail with no early release. I'm certainly against getting rid of the death penalty, which Mary Mashinsky voted to get rid of the death penalty. I'm for reinstating it. So those two things right off the bat are a big distinction between Mary and I. But getting to her point about we're putting too many people in jail, that's probably the funniest statement I've heard in a long, long time. I spent a number of years as a criminal attorney, and I know for a fact that the vast majority of criminals don't spend any time, number one. Number two, those that do very serious crimes so that because the court is so overloaded, they get a deal, so they only serve maybe a year of probation instead of actually serving 3 years of jail time, which is what they should do for whatever crime, just using that as an example. And so I am for sending more people to jail, not less. Once they get there, I'm for keeping them there. Whatever that expense is to the state would be one of the areas that I would fully fund. Why? Because the more you enforce the law and make people pay for their crimes, the more you will actually reduce crime. And so that would be a major difference. And I forget what his second point was, the economy?
The economy, yeah.
Well, obviously the problem with the economy is a mega issue as to the international and the national front, but at the local front, it's really quite simple. Our taxes are too high. The way for us to generate economic activity in Connecticut is to lower our income tax, lower our sales tax, lower our state tax so we keep more people here instead of having them move to Florida. And when we are, let's say, half the tax rate of New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, then business will flow here automatically without us having to do anything. And when businesses flow here because of the tax rate, then they hire people. When they hire people, we have higher employment, but more importantly, less unemployment, and less use of Medicaid, and less use of food stamps, and so forth. And so we have productive members of society, and for Connecticut, it's a simple story. We don't have to be the lowest tax state in the world or in the United States. We only have to be lower than our little region. We have to convince the business that's now in Armonk, New York, to move to Connecticut because they don't want to pay 12%. They'd only like to pay 4%. Their employees pay 2 or 3% income tax instead of 6, or in New York, 12. All we have to do is be better than our surrounding neighbors, and business will flow in here like you've never seen before, and we won't need to bribe businesses with millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to come and build a building here. They'll come here because the environment is fantastic. Right now, we are 50th as a place to move your business to. Isn't that ridiculous? By the way, there's only 50 states. We're dead last. So what we have to do is get, I don't know if we can ever get to number one, but we can certainly, within our community, be number one of the New England region very easily, and we could do it next year.
And ladies and gentlemen, in case you're tuning in late, if you want to call in and ask Greg Bauchand a question, a political question, a town-related question. We're going to talk a little bit as the show moves on about the parking lot referendum, which has been a hot topic for the past year and a half. By all means, give us a call at 203-265-6310. Greg, I want to ask you, your website claims that you are for more tax cuts, more bureaucracy cuts,
right,
more budget cuts, more deregulation, more freedom, and more private enterprise.
You got it. I like it.
Now,
anybody, by the way, anybody who wants to read that same list can go to votebauchand.com or electbauchand.com and see that list.
Now, are you saying to me and to all these viewers out here that Mary Mashinsky is not for any of those topics I just mentioned, not a single one?
I don't know if you hit all. I don't remember exactly what the list was you said, but I would imagine the answer is no, but why don't you take them one at a time?
Okay, for example, let's go with tax cuts. This is always a big
I love that one. Okay.
You are for more tax cuts. Now, where is Mary's stance on tax cuts?
Well, the last year she voted to raise the income tax. For example, a single person making $50,000, they raised the tax rate 10%. 10% in this economy, to raise taxes even 1% is outrageous. For a single person making 50 grand, 10%. For a single person making 100 grand, 20%. 20% increase in tax. Why we would increase taxes now is just crazy. She voted to do it. Both the estate tax, the income tax, and of course the sales tax went up this year as well.
We're gonna get to more of the questions on taxes. Let's just get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on Open Mic with special guest Greg Bauchand. Hello.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I got a question. In today's paper, they were talking about the lights down there, and why weren't we using those for potentially the Wood and Kaplan property or the Simpson Court property, yet we spent approximately $100,000 on the purchase of them by town funds or state federally funds or to subsidize it, number one. Also, if it would cost a minimum amount of money to rewire them or to get them up to LED or LCD for energy efficiency, it seems to me that it would be the most logical thing. I saw Craig Fishbein also supported that, and he also stated in his comment in today's paper that it's another example of government waste, which I happen to agree with. Why don't we take things like this into consideration for smaller government, like the Republicans say, which I agree with, less taxes and less waste. The same thing, there was a parking lot that was just repaved that was a parking lot to nowhere, kind of like airports out west. I think it was called Pickett Lane in Wallingford, between Wallingford Colony Lanes and the package store, but yet we could have used that same amount of money to potentially overlay the Simpson Court parking lot, the 40 by 25 foot strip, that would have subsidized that, and then went back to the owners and said, look, we just fixed your parking lot, and would you give us a 30-year lease again?
Okay, well, we got a lot of different, thank you for the call, by the way, caller. The last reference he's making to is the Simpson Court parking lot deal, which I was going to talk about later on in the program. Now, the caller may, have a point here. I mean, he's for less government, as he was stating. But let's address one thing, and I know there's several things he talked about. The Simpson Court deal. Are you in favor of, and the numbers vary, but the number that always comes out is a $500,000, now it's a state grant. And I guess that's the difference. Last fall, it was a town grant, from what I understood. It was town taxpayer money. Now it's on a state level, and that's why it's getting brought up again. And are you in favor of a $500,000 grant to be used for private property?
Okay. A lot of issues there. Number one is that this is particularly a town issue, not a state issue, so I try to stay away from them, not because I'm afraid of them. I love tackling issues, but because I have so much on my plate as to the state issues. But let me talk some fundamentals here. I am against any government funding on private property as a rule. I voted against the parking lot issue, meaning I voted for it, but you know what I mean. I voted for the repeal.
I voted for it, only to vote against it.
Yeah, I voted for the
repeal
last time because I didn't think that we should be putting money into public money into a private property. However, this time there's some wrinkles. I don't know if there was a 30-year lease last time, but there's a 30-year lease this time to the city, which means that we kind of own it. No, we don't own it for the 31st year, but we own it for 30 years, which is probably as long as the parking lot service is going to last anyway. So that's wrinkle number one. If it's indeed a difference from before, I don't know. But the other wrinkle is that we are applying for a state grant for the $500,000. So it's not going to be out of Wallingford money. It's going to be out of state money, which of course came from Wallingford originally.
Right.
However,
it's still taxpayer money.
It's taxpayer money. But the thing is that once the money's in Hartford and there's a grant pool there, that grant pool is going to be divvied up someplace. So if we don't apply for it for the parking lot, might it not go to Manchester or North Haven or something rather than Wallingford, and then we lose out altogether. So there's a moral issue about state versus state funding or city funding of private property, but then there's a second issue of once that grant money is allocated, shouldn't we go for as much of it as we can possibly get to get most of our tax money back?
We're going to get to our next caller, and we'll discuss this some more. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Greg Bauchand.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I got a couple of things I'd like to ask the gentleman.
Yes.
The gentleman mentioned about crime and stuff. Would you be willing to take arrest warrants and go to Fairfield and Greenwich? Because according to IRS, the majority of the 1%ers, they live in Fairfield and Greenwich. Matter of fact, the crooked headquarters are in Fairfield and Greenwich. Would you like to cut their taxes in half? Also, what's your take on proportional representation? Because, see, I don't believe in a two-party system, Republican and Democrat. As far as I'm concerned, both are crooked. Republicans do the bank job, the Democrats drive the getaway car. We need to get an institution installed where we have proportional representation, when we get rid of the two-party system, as George Washington said. He said the two-party system was dangerous. He ran as an independent. Theodore Roosevelt had the Bull Moose Party. So I'd like to get your head. You want to lock people up. Start in Fairfield and Greenwich. That's where the biggest mass crooks are at. That's a proven fact. The 1% live there. I want to listen to your answer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, caller.
Well, I was a criminal attorney down in that very area, and so I agree that there are some criminals down there, and they ought to have the same type of treatment in sentencing that anybody else does, number one.
Is he referring to like the hedge fund manager?
Well, first of all, there has to be a crime, and he's assuming there's a crime, and I don't know that there is one. But if there was one, if they stole money, then they should spend all their time and not have any early release either. I would agree with that. I'm not sure that you can just say that anybody who makes is in the 1% ought to be arrested. I think that's really what he was saying. But in any event, but he did raise another interesting issue about the multi-party system, and he has some amusing comments to make about the Republicans and the Democrats. And believe me, I get as mad at both parties as you do from time to time. As a matter of fact, I am also endorsed by the Independent Party here in Connecticut, so I'm endorsed by both the Republicans and the Independents. But in terms of proportional representation, we have a system that works pretty well for all its warts, in that by the time things settle out and you get two major parties going at each other, but they're often very much affected by smaller parties where, let's say, this gentleman could join a smaller party and make a real difference in the conversation by just turning a very few votes, is a pretty dynamic political environment, and I think we enjoy one. I believe in Connecticut we're going to have 6 or 7 parties on the ballot, and not just little itty teeny weeny parties, but with substantial membership and influence.
And I don't want to stray off topic here, but I
would love it. Go ahead.
Well, we want to get to the issues that are regarding your campaign against Mary Mashinsky.
Yeah.
Real quick, what is first of all, your prediction on the upcoming presidential election? Take away Republican, Democrat. Do you think Mitt Romney pulls off an upset, or do you think Barack Obama gets another 4 years?
I would say Romney's going to win. Have absolutely no inside knowledge of that at all. It might be more of a hope than a insight. But I am and I'm not a big Romney fan. You know.
Well, a lot of Republicans aren't, but it's the lesser of the.
But I
evils,
think in the end, I wouldn't call it an upset. I think he's going to win handily because the economy just hasn't turned around, and Obama's had 4 years to do it, and his methodology of doing it, which is these huge stimulus packages and higher taxes, just haven't done it.
Great. We're going to get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Greg Bauchand.
Yeah, I don't understand why everybody doesn't see it your way. Connecticut's a nanny state. There's actual programs that they go look for people, put on programs. And it goes on and on and on and on. And they asked Mary about what would you do about Medicare and Medicaid. She says, well, it's good. The kids are eating vegetables now in school, and that should take care of everything, because in the future they'll be healthier. And it's the state, it's already Greece. They're just not dealing with reality. It's been Greece. I know people that are on state that they shouldn't be. People don't realize, and they're waiting for the government to bail them out, or they're waiting for the economy to pick up, and it's not going to happen this time. So it's going to hit the fan because there's no more money, and that will maybe, but they don't live in reality. Thank you.
Thank you for the call.
I couldn't agree more with the caller. We have a nanny state. We try to take care of every single whim and wish of a very, very large portion of the citizenry, and beyond the economic numbers, the money numbers, which are just terrible for the future, for our grandchildren and so forth, is the culture that we are creating, where we give them $20,000 worth of income, we give them $5,000 worth of food stamps, we give them medical, we give them this, we give them that. Pretty soon their benefit package for sitting at home is, $30,000, $40,000, whatever it may be. For them to go out and get a $50,000 job and start paying taxes, well, human nature says I'm going to stay home and take my $20,000 of salary, my food stamps, and my this and my that, and my subsidized bus service, and I'll go to the grocery store there, and all that. It becomes very inhibiting on the human psyche and the human spirit, and pretty soon they're not thriving and enjoying all the things that life can give. And the struggle is part of the deal. So although I'm a big fiscal conservative, and I think we ought to cut the benefits, cut the number of people on the lists and so forth, the real important thing is we are squishing these people down into a terrible life where they're not enjoying the struggle of succeeding. And I think that's the most important issue.
Greg, if I can quickly make note here. Back in March, there was a Record Journal article in which you were interviewed. And in that article, you claimed that Mary Mashinsky has served the district well. Those are your words, for 30 years.
Right.
But it's time for a change. Can you just clarify for the viewers out there and the potential people that are going to vote for you, if you are stating that she's served the district well, why is it now that you're saying she hasn't served the district well on some issues? I mean, where has she served the district well besides the environment? What were you alluding to back in March when you made those comments?
Number one was her intent. She got up every morning. She didn't do it for herself. She did it for what she thought was right for the citizens of Wallingford, or the citizens of the state, and more broadly when she's trying to protect women and children and help with the clean water. Those are all good things, So that's what she did well. The problem is, should we now focus on a different area, which isn't her area? Her area is saying yes, to more and more benefits and getting more and more people on these programs, like the last caller said. That's what she likes to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, in the last debate we just had, she said, if you elect me, you're going to get 2 more years of exactly the same. Figuring it out who needs fuel. They can call me and I'll try to get them fuel. If they want a job, I'll urge them to get a $70,000 bioscience job. That's what she says. When you say somebody has served their community well, she hasn't been in it for herself. She's not trying to make a buck. She really feels what she feels. She has passion, and she walks the talk. When we had the Rotary did a cleanup of the Quinnipiac River, getting old metal pieces out of it and so forth. The other day I went down because I was a new candidate and I wanted to show I was for the environment, all that. But there's Mary in her work clothes just dragging that stuff through the woods and everything. She absolutely is a great person. I just think we need a fiscally conservative person who can say no in Hartford, and Mary hasn't ever said no in Hartford.
Okay. Let's get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Greg Bauchand.
Hey, Mike, how are you? This is John calling in.
Hey, Johnny, how are you?
Good.
What's going on?
I have 3 things I wanted to say on your show tonight.
Well, it's only an hour show.
Sorry for the Buffalo Bills loss last week.
Oh, okay. Thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it.
2, my New England Patriots are in first place.
Uh-huh.
And 3, I have a question for you, Greg.
Okay.
All right.
Why did you now decide to enter politics and run for office?
Well, why didn't you ask me that a couple of months ago? I don't know. Actually, I've had a ball, but I haven't run before. I've never held office. My daughter talked me into it because a person who was going to run was gerrymandered out of the district because he would have beaten Mary Mashinsky, and that kind of made me not happy, just in the politics of it. So I'm a lawyer. I have some time. I have that kind of structure. I happen to work for my daughter, who's a partner in a law firm that's named after her.
That's
I have
Tanya, right?
Yeah, it's Tanya Bauchand. I have the ability to have some leeway in my workload, particularly at my age, when I'm kind of semi-retired type of thing. And so it was an opportunity to make a difference for my grandchildren and have them potentially have less debt on their back when they graduate from college than otherwise. So that was my main motivation.
All right. Well, Johnny, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. Great show.
Thank you for calling. Greg, if I may, this might be a perfect time, as John just mentioned NFL.
Okay.
As you know, each and every week I get to my weekly NFL pick.
Yeah.
With the point spread, I am at an astonishing 5-2
That is
record,
astonishing.
which is pretty good.
With the points?
With the points. Last week I took the New Orleans Saints.
Uh-huh.
So I want to quickly mention for all you football fanatics, this week's NFL pick, and we'll ask Greg in a second if he follows sports. Seattle Seahawks they're actually 3-point underdogs against the Detroit Lions. So I'm taking Seattle Seahawks plus the 3 points as my NFL pick to try to go 6-2 on the year.
Okay.
And I got to ask you, since we're all opened it up, are you an NFL fan, college football fan?
Frankly, I didn't know the NFL was still playing.
Really?
There was a time when I spent my entire Sunday watching the NFL. And
Yeah.
I got DirecTV. I don't have Comcast. I have DirecTV solely because I got the
NFL
package,
ticket?
the NFL ticket thing, and I'd watch 7 channels at once, and I was a nut.
Yeah.
But I wanted to stay married to my wife. No, just kidding. She didn't care. But I got tired of it, and so I actually dropped the NFL, and I don't know anything about it. Don't know who's in first, other than it's always a pretty good guess to say that the Patriots in first, I guess.
Well,
not this year, maybe, but
Well, no, but when you're cheaters and you videotape the other team's practices, you're generally in first place, yes.
Well, I've got a son who is a rabid Bronco fan, and his entire house is totally decorated in Bronco stuff. And if you think I'm kidding, you're not. Everything from the toilet paper to the kitchen cabinets and
Really?
all the plates and everything else. So he's a Bronco guy.
Yeah.
I have another one that's a New England Patriot guy,
Yeah.
and I used to be a Jet guy. But now I'm a Notre Dame fanatic, and that's
Oh.
all I do. And of course,
They're doing pretty well,
We're
right?
6-0, and we're about to go 7-0 Saturday night.
Ranked 5th in the country?
Ranked 5th in the country. Yeah, we're going against the lowly Oklahoma team.
Sooners?
Yeah, Saturday, and I look forward to another great victory.
Now, I just to throw this out there, if anybody out there can maybe call in if you know the date, because I am 100% sure about 4 months ago I had a male caller call me and put me on the spot asking me who was going to be in this year's World Series. I'm not a huge baseball fan. I root for the Red Sox. I told him, Greg, on the air, and if somebody could please go to the archives and find the show so you can call me to confirm. I predicted, when I was put on the spot, it was the Detroit Tigers, San Francisco Giants.
Nice pick.
And lo and behold, tonight, Game 1,
Yeah.
World Series, Detroit Tigers, San Francisco Giants. I mean, I should get some prize for that, right?
I think you should get a mug
I
or
should get
something.
a mug. Well, by the way, you have your OpenMike mug there, which
Thank you very much. I appreciate
give to all my guests, so enjoy that. But if that caller remembers this conversation we had 4 months ago, by all means, I hope you call and give me some brownie points.
Yeah, that was before the season started?
It was about halfway around the All-Star
about
break.
halfway, okay.
I mean, it was still a crapshoot,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like Russian roulette.
Yeah,
But, Greg, I want to quickly, I have some statistical facts and figures regarding the election last year that I thought would be interesting. And the whole reason behind this is I'm encouraging people to register and vote and get out there and vote. So this is, which is the bottom line, right? We want people that are able to vote to go out.
Yeah.
Just to give you some quick information here, last year's elections, only 30% of the population here voted in our last local election.
Oh, the local Wallingford election?
Yes, 37%.
Okay.
The greatest turnout last election was in the 61-year-old and older category with over 53% turnout.
'Twas always thus.
And the least greatest turnout was, not surprisingly, the 18 to 25-year-olds.
Right.
In 2011, last year, the mayor, Dickinson, was elected by 25% of all eligible voters, which was about 6,210 votes. There were almost 15,000 registered voters last year that did not vote. And these votes could have obviously changed the outcome. I mean, Vinnie Testa was running against Mayor Dickinson. I mean, let's just say 15,000 people voted for Vinnie Testa. It would have been a blowout. Mayor Dickinson would have lost. So the message is to get out and vote, regardless of your age, regardless of your party. Get out and vote, because it's one of the rights that we have here in America that we should take advantage of. There's countries, obviously, that people would die, and literally do die, to try to vote. And here we had the opportunity, yet 2/3 of the local population doesn't take advantage of it. Are any of these numbers surprising to you, or?
No, they're not surprising. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of surprised at how high it was for the last election. For 37% of the local,
37% of the
local
local,
election
yeah.
is pretty high, I think. But in any event, I frankly disagree with you. I don't think it matters how many people vote. The polling company can take 1,500 votes and come within, on the day before the election, come within tenths of a point of what the election's going to be, just by doing a poll. Therefore, all you need is really 1,500 people, right? But we don't do 1,500 people, we do a couple hundred million, or whatever the numbers are that
Right.
vote. So it doesn't really matter, since 1,500 would be the same basic result as whatever we're going to get. It doesn't matter whether 30% vote or 80% vote or 10% vote in terms of whether we're having a great democracy or not. People are going to vote if they feel like they need to vote. And so sometimes, like in the 2008 election, there was a surge in voting because there was a certain element of society that said, hey, here's somebody that can change my life for a difference. And so they've all voted, and we had a result. Right? And now a different group of people are all riled up. Let's say they call them the Tea Party group, for want of a better word.
Right.
That group is now all riled up and will surge to the polls. And through the back and forth of all of that, you get the back and forth and the waves of history. But I don't know that we need to have higher elections. I'm not one of in that camp that we need to have more people vote or more registration or whatever. It will naturally happen when people get motivated to vote for their cause.
Well, let's get to our next caller, if we may. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Greg Bauchand.
Good evening, Michael. Good evening, Greg. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good evening.
Good.
Mr.
Enjoying the conversation. I first saw Mr. Bauchand campaigning back in September at the Fishbine Road Race at the YMCA. One bright and sunny Saturday morning.
I remember it well.
I remember Mr. Bauchand was actually riding around, I think they call it a Segway.
Right.
And I was thinking about 2 miles into the race, I was wondering if I could borrow that Segway.
I'll bet you were.
It was kind of nice to get around. I just had one question that I wanted to ask, and I wanted to hang up and listen to the answer.
Sure.
With the campaigning from Romney and Obama down to, or even McMahon and Murphy, there's been a lot of talk about it being a negative campaign. I saw the Murphy and McMahon debates, and I think there was times that, she was going to hit him with a steel chair or something like that. There really is a lot of negativism shown in the campaigns, and a lot of, personal attacks rather than issue attacks. I want to ask first, Mr. Bauchand, if you've found that to be the case in your experience as a first-time campaigner, and do you think that this turns off a lot of voters? And I'll hang up and listen to the answer. Good show, gentlemen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have you found this campaign to be negative?
No, not at all. In fact, exactly the opposite. Mary's been very gracious, and I believe I have been as well. There's been no personal attacks whatsoever. In fact, we share a birthday. I sent her a birthday card and that kind of thing. And I certainly will give her a congratulatory call should I come up short on election night. And frankly, we've had a lot of fun in the debates. We've gone at each other quite often, but always on the issues. The only thing she did was label me a Tea Party aficionado in the last debate, which I thought was very clever, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I guess I've labeled her as somebody who always says yes and tried to take the claim that I've always say no. But I think it does turn off voters. I think sometimes in the big elections you just have to do it or you don't win.
Yeah.
But we have the luxury, Mary and I do, of talking about the issues. On my website, votebauchand.com, you will see a link to my YouTube channel, and there are my 22 TV commercials, and they talk about nothing but issues, 22 different issues. And you can pick out, just go down the list and pick out the issues that are important to you, 3 or 4 of them, whatever, and they're all obviously 30 seconds apiece, and find out exactly where I stand and vote based on that. We don't need a lot of negative name calling at all, and we haven't had it, and she's been great.
Let's get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show with special guest Greg Bauchand.
Good evening, guys. Backfeed here.
Hey, Backfeed Bob. Good evening.
How nice to see everybody.
How are you?
I wanted to ask your guest tonight
Yes.
if I might have seen him behind the gazebo or in front of the gazebo on Route 5.
Yes,
Waving
that's
to
him.
everybody in the morning.
That is him.
I have 2 little shticks that I do, and I'm kind of a jovial guy, number one, but I have 2 fun things that I'm doing. One is I bought a Segway solely for this campaign. I'm going to sell it as soon as I ride it in victory to Hartford, but I'll sell it shortly thereafter. But I go house to house, door to door on my Segway, and I absolutely love it. And I get a lot of views from people, and a lot of people ask me about it. And anybody who asks, I give them a ride on it and so forth. So that's been fun. But the other big thing that I do, trying to get my name out there, is stand at intersections every morning from 8 to 9, and every afternoon now, because it's dark, from 4 to 5. Used to be 5 to 6. I'm at some intersection in my district, waving like a madman out there and smiling and going like that. And the response has been gratifying. I'm sure, if all these people who wave and honk and smile and give me a thumbs up, vote for me, I'm going to win about 94 to 6.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's not going to happen. But I sure enjoy the response from people when they see somebody going out there, and I'm going to do everything I can do to make sure everybody at least knows my name. Hopefully they'll go to my website and watch a couple of my ads.
Well, now that you're on the Open Mic Show,
it's going to be crazy.
Everybody's going to know your
I'm
name.
going to have to get some sort of PR guy now, just to handle the intake.
that's right. Backfeed, have you been beeping and giving the thumbs up to Greg?
I have. In fact, I want to know when he'll be there again.
Yeah, well, somebody asked me to publish a schedule, so I did, and then I think since that time I am totally off that schedule. For whatever reason, I end up being at a different place. But I know tomorrow morning I'm going to be there at that place you're talking about, at the gazebo, in the morning from 8 to 9 o'clock.
That's right around the corner here.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So I do different intersections. I do Tolles Road and Route 5,
man.
and that kind of thing. So I'm all over the place, but I will be there tomorrow morning for sure.
Does that answer your question,
Know
Backfeed?
who I am because I will be driving a vehicle that you have never seen before,
Okay.
unless you were involved with Mary Mashinsky back in 1975 when she spearheaded this particular water pollution program, and they allocated funds for the purchase of this vehicle that was purchased at the state auction 3 years ago for $800
Uh-oh.
because it was considered obsolete, too big, and ineffective for what they needed.
Uh-oh.
Wow.
What did the taxpayer pay for it back in 75?
Vehicle is worth close to $90,000.
Whoa. Backfeed, are you driving this? Is this your
I
vehicle?
will be driving this, yes.
Okay.
Wow.
What color is it? I'll be looking for you.
You will not at all need any clarification on who, what, where, or what it is.
Okay.
You will need nothing. You'll just sit there and go,
There he is.
You know what, Backfeed? You might see me waving at cars tomorrow just to get a ride.
Backfeed Bob, I love it. I'm going to be looking for you.
you will know this. When I beep the horn, you're going to go, it's him.
All right.
I love it.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you for the call,
To
Backfeed.
ask about.
All right.
I need to ask one other thing.
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
What about Donald Trump's latest query from the president.
Yeah.
Any feelings about that?
I certainly don't think President Obama is going to give in to that request.
Well, I think it's all silliness. Trump is a consummate publicity seeker. I think it takes away from. We have so many important issues. I mean, I would love to know whether Obama was born in Kenya or not. I mean, that would be a fun thing to know. But it certainly isn't an issue of this campaign, in my opinion, because we have so many tremendous things facing us. Whether it's the whole foreign policy. Collapsing around us, whether it's our economy, which has not come back, and so forth. There's so many other reasons to vote one way or another that I certainly hope that Trump's ability to generate publicity doesn't take away from the serious issues that we're facing. That's my view on it.
Energy policy.
Okay?
All right.
If we have an energy policy, the world will self-correct itself.
And what would your policy be?
Well, we need to stop this extortion that's taking place with the trading of energies, gas, oil, electricity, fuel, by the stock markets and stuff. We need to stabilize that so that worldwide we all have an equal playing field for energy.
Okay.
Any business here and on this planet that is in business, they need to be able to know from 1 week to the next what they can afford, how they can budget, how they can plan their sales for the year, how they're going to get through the next 6, 7, 8 months. It's not possible because every 3 to 4 weeks, our cost for fuel was unridiculously up in the 4s or back down to the 3s. And not a businessman alive can budget for that type of yearly fiscal expenditure. Not one. And that's why they're not investing. That's why they're not hiring. That's why they're not going into research. That's why they're sitting there saying, I got to get my costs in control. I'll make them elsewhere in the other part of the world.
Right.
At least I'll know they'll be cheaper than they were last week. Energy policy. People will have money in their pockets, jobs, the ability to afford things. If a group of people or an individual says, I'd like to buy new furniture, I don't know if I'm going to have a job. I don't know if I'm going to have a job because my boss can't afford to pay for the cost of plastics and wire and cements and electronics because every day he's talking about laying people off. He had a good month, he had a bad month, he had a great month, he had a terrible month. Energy policy will take care of that.
All right, back to you. Well, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you very much for the call.
Oh, you're welcome, guys. Good night, and
right,
good luck
take
to you.
care.
See you on the street.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So, energy policy is...
Drill, baby, drill.
Drill.
I believe we ought to drill off the shores of all of our states that have oil. We ought to drill in North Dakota. We ought to put that pipeline from Canada down to New Orleans or wherever it's going. Maybe it's in Texas, whatever. But we ought to drill. We ought to get as much of the natural gas out of the shale as we possibly can. We ought to become not only independent but be able to sell it. I believe in nuclear power. I think we can get energy cost back to just a fraction of our economy instead of this overwhelming factor that it is in everybody's budget with $4 gas. We can't get back to 20-cent fuel like it was when you and I, not you, what am I saying? Well,
I know you're a
mere 32 years old. But, people my age who had 20-cent gas, we can't get to 20-cent gas because of inflation, but let's say that's $1 gas. We can get back to $1 gas. All we have to have is a lot of it. We have to get rid of the regulation of having mandated segments of even of our state. They can sell it for a certain price, or they have to have, in California, they have to have certain grades at certain times of the year, and all this silliness. Let the markets factor all of that in, and we will have, we should be drilling in Anwar and every other place like Anwar. We're not harming the environment at all. Caribou procreate twice as fast near an oil pipeline as they do any place else. It's all silliness, so that's I agree with the caller. Energy policy is important, and it's an easy solution, and we wouldn't have to worry about the Mideast ever again from that perspective.
Greg, we are down to our last 10 minutes of the show already, and I just want to get a couple quick questions in here before we wrap things up. And again, if you want more information on Greg's campaign, you can go to electbauchand.com.
Right.
And also...
Or Vote Bauchand. They go to the same place.
Or Vote Bauchand.
Vote Bauchand is easier to remember. VoteBauchand.com.
Yep.
And you'll see not only my positions, but all my TV ads. Pick a few. They're fun to watch.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, one of the questions was, one of the TV ads was regarding this website.
Oh, yes, Rochambeau.
Rochambeau. Now, this was if you want to just quickly tell the viewers
I love
about
this story.
this
Yeah.
story, because I was blown away by it before the show when we were talking about it.
Well, when I was first getting into politics and into the election, I was starting to read more than I normally would about state politics to kind of ramp up, if you will. And I read a really strange thing on ConnecticutCapitalReport.com that said that the state Senate had just passed a bill to fund a website called Rochambeau something to give the history of a guy named Rochambeau who walked across Connecticut in 1776 or something, and there's a thing called the Rochambeau Trail. And they approved $180,000 to fund a website to talk about the Rochambeau Trail. I thought that was really bizarre since I'd set up a number of websites, and so I couldn't imagine what they were spending $180,000 on. So just as a lark, I went on GoDaddy.com, got the URL, RochambeauTrail.com, which is still up and running, by the way. You can go there right now, RochambeauTrail.com. And on that website, other than the little link we had to put that said that my political campaign was paying for it, so I didn't go to jail for spending campaign money on something that I didn't disclose was from me. But anyway, there's one link for that. Then there's another link that takes you to Wikipedia, where there is the webpage for the Rochambeau Trail. And there's more on there, hundreds and hundreds of pages, thousands and thousands of words, pictures, diagrams, maps, anything you want to know about Rochambeau Trail. And I did it for $59.05. And so I put out a press release that I just saved the state $179,994 or whatever the number was. And I'm telling you, it was so much fun. Every major newspaper in Connecticut called me. Most of the big TV stations sent a truck to my house to interview me, and it was a lot of fun. So that's the type of thing. Later that night, a state senator called me, woke me up 11 o'clock at night. He said, "Greg, you really sorry about that. Created a website. I'm sorry." He said, "You really created a hornet's nest with this website thing, but I got to admit to you, I voted for it myself." He was a conservative Republican senator. And I said, "Why?" He said, "We pass things all the time. 20 million here, 30 million there, 100 million for this, 10 million for that. $180,000, it doesn't even get any attention. If something comes across a committee or the full Senate, which it did in this case for $180,000 or something, they just say, vote yes. That's it. $180,000 doesn't mean anything. And that's the problem with the state. That's the problem with state government today, is that if you're passing hundreds of millions of dollars all day long in expenses, when something comes along for $180,000 or $2 million or whatever, come on, we got other things to do. You know, well, what I have promised everybody is that I'm going to be the guy that concentrates on the RochambeauTrail.com proposals, if you will, and look for those $180,000 savings, and I probably can save 2 or 3 of those a day, just by saying no to all those kinds of crazy expenses.
That's a great story of how from $180,000 you did it for $59. Real quick, I want to ask you now. We were talking earlier about tax cuts. You were saying that Mary Mashinsky, the Democratic incumbent, your opponent, is going to, or is talking about a 10% tax increase on somebody making $50,000.
They passed it.
It was passed.
Yeah.
What's your position on tax increases or tax cuts? Where, for example, someone making $50,000 under your plan would get what?
Half of what they're paying now.
Would
I
pay
would cut the existing tax structure, the income tax, everybody pays half. Whatever the rates are, if it's 6.7% for rich people, make it 3.35. If it's 2% for people making $50,000, make it 1%. Whatever the numbers are, I would cut it in half. I would cut the sales tax by half. So if it's 6.35%, which they just raised it, Mary voted to raise it from 6 to 6.35, I'd cut it to 3.12 or whatever the number is. Cut. Now, how do you do that? Then you got to cut expenses. And so I would cut the payroll, the state payroll, I'd cut the salaries, I'd cut the defined benefit pension plan that all the state employees have, that nobody else in the world has anymore, just state employees, and make it a 401k. We currently have spent about $10 billion a year in salaries. The current defined benefit pension plan costs us $1.7 billion, 17% of that number, and they're not even fully funding it, right? They're way underfunding it. We have $60 billion in debt in the state. All but $17 billion of it is from our pension plan, which is not funded yet. So, but let's say it's just $1.7 billion. I would turn that into a 4% defined contribution 401k type of plan. Mm-hmm. So our state cost is 4%, not 17%. We don't have any unfunded liabilities that my grandchildren are going to have to pay for. And that's, so I would cut expenses, cut people, cut salaries, cut benefits. But most importantly, I would cut taxes, income tax, sales tax, the death tax to zero, so that people don't have to move to Florida and leave their kids here. They can stay here and not have to pay death taxes. So I would do all of that, and we would become the absolute engine of economic growth in the New England region.
And speaking of four, this is the very last question. Are you saying that you would only run if you get elected for just 4 years?
Absolutely. Well, of course, I have the advantage of starting when I'm really old. So
4 years and you're done.
Four and done. Right, exactly.
You won't be in office 30-something years like Mary.
That would be ugly. But no, 4 years would be it, and then we'll let somebody else take over.
You just want new blood?
I want to go up there and have some fun, say no to give them a different paradigm of how to run government. Can a lot of my proposals actually happen? No, because we have a supermajority of Democrats up there. They're going to do whatever they want. Hopefully we'll have less than a supermajority. They're still going to be the majority in the next 2 or 4 years that I'm in office. So I won't be able to get much done, but I can hoot and I can holler, and that's what I intend to do.
That's fair enough. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are just about out of time. An hour has gone by quickly, as I always tell my guests. And I want to thank you for coming on, Greg. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Again, if you have any questions, if you want to know more about Greg's campaign, how he differs from Mary Mashinsky, the incumbent, you can go to electbauchand.com or also votebauchand.com. You can also find Greg on Facebook.com under Elect Bauchand, right?
Exactly. And anybody who wants to can call my cell, 203-317-9665. That's 203-317-9665. I'd love to talk to my constituents. I'll talk to you about any issue, and I would love the opportunity.
That's great. A quick reminder, ladies and gentlemen, next Wednesday night I will not be having any guests on, but it is our annual Halloween show. and I have a very special surprise in store for you regarding a costume, which is even scarier than the one I have on now.
This is not going to be good.
So be sure to watch next Wednesday night.
Should drive ratings, though.
It should, and I'm hoping it does. But be sure to watch the Halloween show. And I think we're actually going to have trick-or-treaters, like we had last year, who are in the area of the WPA studios coming up live here on the set of OpenMike to show off their costume.
That's a terrific idea.
And if your family's watching, you can see yourself and they can see you on TV with your Halloween costume. Nice. So that's great.
That is great.
So that's next week on the 31st, which it's already here, Halloween, and then the week after is Election Day. So I do wish you luck in the election.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone out there can get out there and vote. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all the callers for calling in tonight. I want to thank our technical director, Mike, in the back control room, our producer, Pat. I want to thank Greg Bauchand, my special guest, for coming on. For everyone here at the Open Mic set, I'm your host, Michael Cuomo. I will see you next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Thank you very much for watching.